Poland, but it's not certain. I mean, the good news is that the United States continues to uphold nuclear deterrence for Europe. That's important, and stays in the NATO command structure. But everybody now is talking about NATO 3.0, whereby they mean a NATO which is going to be run, financed, resourced, operated, Europeans in the front line, much more a European show and less an American show than the NATO we've all been used to from our fathers and grandfathers.
And just on Iran, though, we saw, of course, the war flare up in the last couple of days. Trump says the ceasefire is over. Where do we go from here, Jamie Shea?
Well, I think we need to wait and see, because clearly the talks with Iran have not yet been broken off, even if they're not going anywhere fast. I think, Trump knows from opinion polling in the United States and even the Senate passing the War Powers resolution that this war is not popular at home, even with his own Republican MAGA base. The Americans want him to end the war, and he's got the midterm elections coming up. So, I don't think he voluntarily wants to get back into a full-scale war against Iran. For Europe, of course, it's very bad news, because if Trump, on the one hand, wants Europe to spend all of this extra money on defence, the last thing you want to do is tank the European economies with higher oil prices and inflation and higher debt costs, which are going to make it so much more difficult to fund defence. And, Europe was sort of hoping for a breathing space with the oil price going down to $60 a barrel. It's now up 5%. Who knows where it's going to go. And therefore, all of the kind of pressures that we had a couple of months ago, including, of course, things like, fertilizer not getting out of the Gulf to feed hungry people in Africa, all of those difficult scenarios are going to return. But let's wait and see, because I think it's Trump's interest to keep this memorandum of understanding going and talks with Iran going. And therefore, both sides may choose after, a flurry of activity to de-escalate once more.
OK, Jamie Shea, always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you so much for joining us live this morning. And now for the humanitarian lens on all of this, we're joined here in the studio by Jean-Nicolas Beuz from the UNHCR here in Brussels. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, as we're reporting there, the war in Iran really flaring up again. What does that mean for your job and for, of course, migration flows and the humanitarian aspect?
So every time that bombs are being dropped or drones attacks occurs, we have people who are forced to leave their home, whether it's in Iran, in Ukraine, or in Sudan. So we can expect that some people last night had to flee their home because they were destroyed, but also many others will flee as a preventative measure because they are afraid that they are the next target. What we saw in the case of Iran, specifically earlier this year, is that according to official figure, more than 1 million people were displaced, mainly to rural areas to avoid the urban center, which were targeted, but have no come back, except that for 150,000 families who have their house destroyed, they will not be able to come back. So that's where the humanitarian, UNHCR and others, have to step in to provide some support with the authorities in the case of Iran.
And how are you providing that support when cuts are being, there's many cutbacks to your organisation? We're hearing as well Trump saying that the bombing could get, quote, much worse.
Every time we have to make choice. We have to decide, we have to prioritize who we are going to help. Are we going to help the mothers with 3 children or the mother with 7 children? Are we going to help the elderly people who have no support? Every time it's a choice, because indeed, over the last 3 years, the humanitarian partners have seen the budget put at their disposal by donor countries, the US, the European Union, the Gulf countries, really shrink to almost less than half of what we had 3 years ago. And the needs are continuing rising, so therefore we are unable to help everyone.
And meanwhile, it's already 1 month since the EU's Migration and Asylum Pact has come into force. What has changed in your view?
So we will see. The test is really the implementation in every of the 27 member states. We will see whether it will make the decision faster, fairer, whether it will make the life of the decision maker easier and less costly for us, the taxpayer, because it will be a more rapid decision, but also whether the principle, the protection principle behind the asylum system in Europe will help. Are we going to continue not detaining people, or people who seek asylum will be systematically detained? Are we going to give them legal aid so they can navigate the asylum procedure, which are quite complex? Or are we going to leave them alone, figuring out what needs to be done with appeal, which are very costly for us? So the test now is really in the implementation.
And a big focus now, of course, on returns. And we saw technical talks take place recently here between officials from the Commission and the Taliban. What was your view of this encounter?
So what we need to remind everyone is that a country may be in different phases. We're speaking about Afghanistan with the Taliban. We're speaking about Syria with a new regime and probably more hope for people to return. And we're speaking about Sudan, where the return is not possible because it's a dire situation with the conflict and famine increasing. What is really important for the European Union is to keep the principle that nobody shall be returned to a possible situation of harm. And the harm can come from different actors, from different situations. So before sending anyone to Afghanistan, Syria, or Sudan, we need to ensure that there's an individual assessment. Will this person be able to regain control over their life without being put at risk?
Okay, Jean-Nicolas Beuz, thank you so much for coming into us here and being our guest on Europe Today. But now moving on to another story, the EU's anti-fraud wing, OLAF, has caught an international trafficking operation responsible for counterfeit condoms. They're untested, uncontrolled and unsafe. Jakob Janis has the story.
It would be an easy topic to laugh at if it wasn't a matter of public health. Brussels anti-fraud investigators at OLAF just broke up an international smuggling group. And criminals try to slip their illegal cargo past European border checks using a bizarre disguise. They declared the shipments as children's toys to evade customs controls. But there was a problem because the boxes did not contain toys at all. The cross-border network distributed more than 200,000 counterfeit condoms across the continent. Smugglers targeted 3 specific nations as their main entry hubs: Romania, Serbia and Spain. And when the border teams intercepted the fakes, it turned out they all come from a single source in China. And the total black market value of this illegal shipment sits at over 200,000 euros. But you see, potential health costs will be much higher. The European Anti-Fraud Office warns these fakes are untested and unsafe. Or, in plain English, they can spread infections and cause unplanned pregnancies. But there is also a bigger picture here. Fake condoms are just one part of the massive black market boom across the continent. And I'll give you an example. Last year, a global Interpol crackdown seized 57 million euros worth of counterfeit medicines. And this part is important. When it comes to Europe, the main targets were fake weight loss pens and cosmetic and performance-enhancing peptide supplements. For distribution, criminals do not even need to use the dark web anymore. They simply flood social media to sell their knockoffs straight to your feed. But back to our fake condoms. Brussels claims this raid proves European enforcement works, but it also shows how criminals exploit the system. The continent still remains open to black market fakes, and with countless cases going unnoticed, it might look like Europe is left without protection.
Jakob Janis there. And now it's time for our World Cup segment. Well, following a day without World Cup action, after 27 days of games, goals and emotions, just 8 teams remain. 6 European, 1 African and 1 from the Americas. One side will be eliminated every day until Sunday. So here's 4 things that you should know about the quarter-finals. First, France probably remains the favourites, but standing in their way are Morocco, who just like in 2022 are the only African team left at this stage. This time though, they arrive as African champions and have a much more mature side, so expect a very good fight. Then Spain, who's the only team yet to concede a goal, with Unai Simon breaking the record for the longest run without conceding in the tournament's history. The question now, of course, can Belgium end that run? Now, the Red Devils definitely have some renewed confidence after knocking out one of the tournament's co-hosts, the United States. They've also faced Spain in the World Cup twice, losing in 1990 and winning in 1986 with a penalty shootout. And third, one team will be playing its first ever World Cup quarter-finals, and that's, of course, Norway. They've risen 12 places in FIFA's World Cup rankings since the start of the tournament, from 31st to 19th. If they beat England, they could enter the top 10. The clash will see two of the tournament's deadliest strikers go head-to-head. I'm talking, of course, about Erling Haaland and Harry Kane. So that is a match not to be missed. And finally, Messi. After leading Argentina to a late victory over Egypt with a goal and an assist, he became the very first player to score in 9 consecutive World Cup matches. Messi is the tournament's all-time assists hero, and he's the first player aged 30 or over to score 8 goals at a single World Cup. What record is left for him to break, and can he keep it going against Switzerland? Stay tuned and enjoy the games. But that brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, reach out to us if you have any points, comments or questions. europetoday@euronews.com, that is our email address. But from all of us, thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and see you very soon on Euronews.